Hello, Dennis Shao here with an answer to a content marketing question. So here's the question. Under which circumstances should the first white paper by a new brand with a new product reference the product, its use case, or its value proposition? So here are my thoughts. As with a lot of things in life, there's no black and white answer. So what I've decided to do is provide some pros and cons for the leading with product versus leading with topic, and let you, the listener, decide or weigh the pros and cons. All right, so let's say lead with product. So this was the question scenario where your first white paper is about your product. Now, there are pros and cons. Here are the pros. The first benefit or pro is that you're obviously going to be able to introduce your product to potential buyers. So these would be people unaware of your product, but they went ahead and filled out your form, or maybe if your white paper is available without ungated, they have opened up or they've downloaded and opened up the white paper and they're learning about your product. For you who are the makers of the product, that's a good thing. Next, you can teach them, so you introduce them to your product, and the next step, of course, is to teach them about the benefits and perhaps some of the use cases, how your customers are using your products. And this is the most ideal scenario, which is that you're engaging with buyers or potential buyers. So there are going to be prospects who are in the market looking for a solution. They're looking for something that will relieve or address a pain point, perhaps. And your product could be one of those solutions. So there is a chance that you can put your white paper that's product specific in front of a prospect who is actively evaluating solutions. That's a gold mine right there. Now, there are some cons, so let's take a look at those. You're going to get lower response rates. So if you're developing your first white paper and you put it out there to the world, expect that a white paper specific to your product is going to get less people interested than a white paper on solving a pain point within your industry or the bigger picture of what your product solves. If you can help people understand how they can address that problem without leading with your product, then you're going to get a higher response rate. So this is just thought leadership content. You potentially could have, if your first piece of substantive content is about your product and you put that in front of your target audience, people might not want that, and they might flee to your competition who is providing more of industry leading or thought leadership content. And last, there's a chance that because of this, your brand reputation and affinity could be diminished or damaged, meaning someone got a bad taste in their mouth because you led with your product, they went to your competition, and in the future, they would be less likely to consider you. Okay, so now similarly, it's kind of flipped here. Let's look at the benefits if you were to lead with topic, meaning thought leadership content that does not lead with your product. It's all about things that your potential customer would find valuable. It could have a lot to do with your product without naming your product. It could have nothing to do with your product, but it could be something that hits the sweet spot of your target customer. What this does, the benefits, it allows you to make yourself known to prospects. So people will find your content. It's often going to be something perhaps you're discovered without, that doesn't sit behind a wall. It allows you to establish your authority on the topic. So people will say, hey, these guys or gals know what they're talking about on this topic. And as a result, it builds trust and it garners future consideration. So it's filling the top of the funnel, getting people aware of you. And as you create more of this great content, people will gain more and more trust in you. And in the future, when they are looking for a solution to purchase to meet a pain point and your products fall into the solution space, you may receive a higher consideration compared to your competitors. So there are some downsides to thought leadership content. One is that I talked about those in-market buyers. People are ready to buy now. They're looking for their solutions. If you lead with thought leadership and not have anything to do with your product, you might miss those buyers. The next two are cases where you're going to have people that love your content, but they don't really take it to the next step. So when I say in the second point here is failure to connect your content to your offers, people might be the most loyal reader of your content, but they may not take the next step to say, hey, what is even the products that they sell? And so you might gain mind share without wallet share. So there's cases where if you're never talking about your product, people will continue to read your content, but they may not take that next step to find out what products you make, maybe even ask for pricing, etc. All right, so let me now cover scenarios in which you can do either of these, lead with product or lead with topic. When to lead with product? When you've established yourself in your market, people are aware of you, you have a pretty strong share of voice relative to your competition, then there could be a case where people know about what you do, they've gained trust in your content, you can lead with your product. Secondly, of course, if prospects are asking for content about your products and maybe they're short on that, you should give it to them. You should create content that leads with your product. And lastly, there are cases where you have a short-term goal. It could be the marketing team. It could be your executive team says, we need X amount of Y. We need 100 new sales appointments or opportunities this quarter. Then you may need to create content that leads with product to meet those short-term goals for highly qualified leads. Okay, when to lead with topic. So if you're entering a new market, it's often useful to gain the trust of that market instead of providing content that's all about your product. I don't think the new market is going to necessarily be ready to hear about you and your product. They want to hear about how you might be able to solve their problems or gain their trust without leading with your product. Next, if you're shifting to your target customer, so you had one ideal customer profile or buyer persona, and you're now selling to new buyer personas, that's often useful. It's kind of like entering a new market because the new buyer personas may not be familiar with you. And lastly, if you're looking, it depends on your objective. If you're just looking to build a brand, build a following, build a loyalty to folks who are already aware of you or might be already customers of yours, versus transactions. And by transactions, I mean leads, opportunities, and sales. In those cases, it might be useful for you to lead with topic and build that authority. So there you have it, some pros and cons and when you might want to use either approach. Hope you found this useful.